This podcast is the key to victory. Welcome everyone to Super Audio Robo Podcast Z. I'm Ark, that's Neff, and this is the show where we recommend you the finest and most courageous mecha content for your cultural and artistic development.
You'll be filled with so much courage today after listening to this that you'll be practically overflowing with it. You will be yelling courage out at the top of your lungs. That's what this show will do to you. That's what it did to me.
Yep, today's episode is The King of Braves, GaoGaiGar, a Brave series anime, the last one on its TV anime run, and quite possibly within the Super Robot fandom, the most famous.
Yeah, this is, as I mentioned, the only Brave series I watched all the way from beginning to end.
That was also basically me for the longest time, and many others. This one had always just gotten the most recognition, especially outside Japan in the intervening years, because it, at the very least, that recognition is very well deserved. It is a fantastic anime.
It is. So why don't you start us off with a synopsis for the show?
All right, we'll explain what the deal with it is. There's a few moving parts to it, but this should hopefully summarize it very well. On a winter night in 1996, a young couple come across a giant mechanical lion, leaving a baby behind in their care before vanishing. 7 years later, in 2003, a young astronaut named Gai Shishio suffers an accident in orbit as an unidentified object crashes through and lands on Earth. Now in 2005, the Zonders have appeared to take over the planet. To combat them is the gutsy Geoid Guard, with Gai Shishio rebuilt as a cyborg, the mysterious robot lion Galeon, and the various super AI robots leading the fight. And a young boy named Mamoru Amami soon discovers his mysterious origins as he's drawn into the battle to save Earth. It's a tale whose heroes have sworn an oath through courage, capable of creating any miracle.
Would you call it simple and straightforward story, as most Brave stories are? I mean, there's more to it. There's way more. Yeah, actually.
It's relatively more in-depth, for sure.
Mm-hmm.
Because, all that stuff I mentioned at the start that, clearly comes off as backstory is actually quite important.
It is.
Yeah, this is a show that's got, a lot going on for it. Even stuff that has to do with, looking at it from the production angle. So we might as well get into our prehistory as well. Get into, describing the making of this seminal anime. Kind of as I mentioned at the beginning, the King of Braves GaoGaiGar, it would be the final entry in the Brave series as far as TV anime. The 8th anime in what was already basically airing yearly, not missing a beat. An annual franchise that Sunrise and Takara had going on for most of the 90s. Yeah, it's no surprise as well, especially when we brought it up in our overview episode about the Brave series, that this was consequently the final TV anime, because years after years of declining toy sales made it obvious that the original reason for why this franchise existed in the first place kind of was not able to keep going, essentially.
Mm-hmm.
As far as director, again, just as a refresher for context, the first 3 Brave series anime were all directed by the same person, Katsuyoshi Yatabe, which gave all of them a pretty similar feel, along with an escalation in depth and nuance to them. Going from Ex Kaiser to Fiber to Dagarn, you can feel a sense of maturity throughout those 3.
Mm-hmm.
And then the 3 Brave series anime after that, we talked about one of them. They were directed by Shinji Takamatsu. Got Mike Guy, Jay Decker, and Goldran, all basically kind of going with the idea of having a sub-theme in addition to courage. The 7th anime, Dagwan, which I've still not gone around to watching yet for obvious reasons, that had a different director, and that director did not return for GaoGaiGar because of just how incredibly different this would be in tone, because the duty of director would be given to Yoshitomo Yonetani, and looking at what he's done as far as work in the Brave series following this is he's basically been not just for all things having to do with GaoGaiGar, but even a spin-off series called Better Man, and he also pitched the original concept for the currently ongoing web manga Swargrader, which is just a gigantic anniversary crossover celebration of the entire Brave series legacy.
I'm a little surprised
Yeah.
because I looked at his credits and it's like, wow, he's done a few stuff, but I feel like GaoGaiGar is like his biggest work, and I'm surprised he hasn't done anything after or
There
anything
was one thing
as
I did notice that was kind of amusing is that apparently he directed the anime adaptation of Shogeki no Soma.
Oh, I saw that too. Which okay,
Yeah,
yeah,
which
you're right.
thinking
You're
about
right.
that makes sense.
Yeah, you know what? That's probably in his wheelhouse somehow.
Yeah,
Uh,
because it is very clear with GaoGaiGar, with its direction compared to all the other Brave series, is that the concept of courage, like the prevalent underlying theme that this franchise has always been about, would be pushed to the forefront to a ludicrously blunt level, I am going to say.
oh
Like,
yeah.
we keep saying it in a way that it sounds like a joke, but it's not.
It's not.
Like, many characters exude bravery at all times and are extremely hot-blooded about it.
I love Food Wars. I know it's kind of trashy, but it's great for the reasons you just said.
Yeah, that's a good fucking reason.
Yeah. Anyways, we are talking about GaoGaiGar today.
Yes, courage is, like, obviously, like, the most important thing going on in GaoGaiGar itself. There's, like, some other, like, influences that kind of work its way into the story of the anime as well, besides just that. One thing that actually made a lot of sense once I read up on it, because of just how much this has to do with, like, classic Japanese folk tales and kind of how you see elements of those being very prevalent in even modern pop culture today. But, like, the tale of the bamboo cutter is one where, like, some of its ideas kind of factor into some of the, like, the show's plot, especially as it has to do with, like, its kid protagonist Mamoru, because of its origins in the story. And actually, kind of, I guess this is kind of getting a bit ahead of ourselves before we get to our primary characters, but I think it goes to show just how well put together, like, this anime is, that, like, the kid tag-along character doesn't really feel much like a tag-along and actually has a very important role to play alongside, who you see as, like, the actual, heroic figure, like,
Yeah.
like the protagonist of any other anime, essentially. But it makes sense, considering that like, your kid character is actually, like, delivered by the raddest stork ever from, like, a planet far off in like, the far ends of the galaxy. And as always, a reminder when it comes to the Brave series and, like, just kind of how the production for these TV anime went, is that yes, this series has always been a collaboration between, the creatives at Sunrise with Takara, like the toy company that would later merge to become Takara Tomy. Up until this point, robots in the Brave series had always followed very specific design ideas inspired by Takara's previous involvement with the Transformers franchise. And, like, that Transformers, Gen 1 style Transformers-isms are still there to an extent, but like, there's also, like, some pretty fundamental changes in other areas that makes it stand out quite a bit in terms of the design sensibilities, especially, I think, as far as, like, how to make it work a lot better as a toy, considering a lot of Brave robots in the past, whenever they would, like, have, like, especially transformations or even combinations, you would agree that there is definitely some fucking around with, like, scale and proportions in order to make certain, like, combinations or, like, changes in form actually work.
Yeah, you still have to find a way to make it make sense somehow.
That was always going to be the issue with, like, this kind of collaboration, where it is like,
Yeah.
the toys that you want to buy are never going to, like, completely match the accuracy of the anime material,
Right.
Right? Like, at the very least, they were able to capture most of, like, the very sensible Transformers mechanisms for, like, how all the parts moved and whatnot. So, like, that was accurate, but it always fell apart when it came to, like, the combinations, which were like the big draw of, like, all the Brave series prior to this. So, to address it, GaoGaiGar, in a way that feels paradoxical, because of how much it is, like, the most super robot anime of the franchise.
Yeah.
It adopts a lot more real robot logic in the designs and making sure that, like, when things fit together, that it actually makes consistent physical sense.
Yeah, this isn't Get a Robo where the three robots just kind of mash into each other and make a bigger robot. There is like a logic to it, and you will see it over and over again in every episode. But it doesn't matter because it's cool.
Yeah, this is one of those things where it is like you have no room to complain about the reuse of key animation because it is lovingly animated.
Yes, and
like the titular robot of this anime like gets that the most, and it is obviously well deserved.
I mean, someone probably worked really hard, so you know what? Good for them to have their work and to be in every episode.
It does mean as well that, like, because of those changes, that a lot of these typical type of Brave combinations that you would see, as well as, like, certain weapon types, would not be made for this anime itself. Like, every major Brave series anime up prior to this, you know, you always kind of had, like, the different stages for like how much stuff that you could combine with like your lead robot before eventually getting to what would be considered their quote great combination.
Mm-hmm.
GaoGaiGar, amusingly enough, does not have anything resembling a great combination, really.
No.
It's like very specific key components that you see combine into their full form like as early as the first episode. Like it is very clear what the mentality is for the robot designs and like combinations going into this show. I'd say in the long run, it's definitely worked. I mean, like we're in a world now where GaoGaiGar, like the titular robot, because of just how well realized its combination and transformation mechanisms are, that Bandai was able to put out a fucking real grade model kit, which I have.
Yeah, I was gonna say.
It's fucking beautiful.
Yeah, but how long did it take you to build it?
I think at the end of the day, it still took me more time to apply all the sticker decals than it did to actually put the pieces together.
Oh, yeah, because, you know, that makes sense. Stickers are the worst.
Yeah.
Yeah, like while I was, that just reminds me, while I was in Japan, I saw like a giant GaoGaiGar model box, and I was so tempted, but it would have been such a pain to bring that back with me.
Oh, yeah, that box is fucking huge.
Yeah, so I'm so jealous that you got one yourself.
Definitely want to get some other ones if I can. Hell, I still wish that we could get like plastic bottles of like all the other GaoGaiGar robots if I'm being honest.
Yeah.
Because they'd be able to work.
Yeah.
But yeah, it is such a wild thing. There are like other like model kits out there for other Brave series robots, but none of them are able to like, again, because of the sort of cheats that they had to get up to when it came to the animation source material. It's like there's no way to get like that accurate transformation and combination.
Yeah.
That looks anime proper, you know?
Yeah.
That's really like the crowning achievement of GaoGaiGar's robot designs at the end of the day. And even as like a quick aside as well, I realized I forgot to write this down in the notes, but I still remembered it anyway. But like musically with this show, this is also something where like for big Super Robot fans, the show is also very famous for it because of its opening theme kind of leading to the feel of GaoGaiGar itself being quite a bit different compared to its predecessors. You listen to like the openings for past Brave series anime, like it's all kind of like very similar styles. The sort of thing that's expected for like a young kids anime. Like all of them by female vocalists, except Dogwon. Dogwon, I think, was when they got like a male vocalist, but GaoGaiGar feels different even compared to that because they got motherfucking Masaki Endao to sing this one. Yusha Otanjo. It's fucking glorious to put simply. And that name is important because, as we always like to bring up, he is one of the key members of Jam Project. It's no wonder that he would find his way into that super group.
He is a hell of a vocalist. If you ever listen to this opening, you know how good it is, though. If you haven't, you should listen to the opening.
Yes. And if you also want to listen to like even more stuff from like Masaki Endao, it's like another big thing to kind of know about him is that he has also done a lot of his own covers of other popular anime songs.
He has, in fact, done a cover, one of the best covers of the Power Ranger theme.
Yes. Oh, I remember that one. The other one I was thinking of as well was Genesis of Aquarion's opening, because that's a classic example of like an astronomically disproportionate amount of people know about the main theme more than the anime itself.
Yeah.
But he makes it work.
That man can make anything work, I feel. Song wise,
dude's mega talented of a singer. I love it. Ultimately, GaoGaiGar aired on Japanese TV for 49 episodes. You know, your typical standard length for this franchise.
Yeah.
Going from February 1st, 1997 to January 31st, 1998. 98. That's a fucking year to remember for another thing, obviously. But yeah, there were also plans for a succeeding TV anime in the form of Photogreiser. We all know that like that this was not going to happen. You know, the writing was on the wall regarding the franchise's fate. But even though it was the last time the Brave series would have an anime air on TV, it would still get a bit more push from Sunrise and future material for like years to come. And even with like hard spin-offs that have nothing to do with the Brave series, because I mentioned the name of Better Man, which is like a very bizarre, like actually not for kids at all kind of spin-off that is set in the same universe, which is still bizarre to me of all things. But fortunately, there would still be more GaoGaiGar proper after this, because an 8-episode OVA in the early 2000s would be produced called GaoGaiGar Final.
Yeah.
For whatever reason, I somehow thought this had started in 99, but no, it turns out it started straight up in 2000 and went on into like early 03. And I feel like has ultimately like led to two things. One being that GaoGaiGar for the longest time would become the go-to Brave representative in the Super Robot Wars series, which is pretty much like the biggest reason why I think both of us and like many others know about GaoGaiGar in the first place.
I remember seeing it in Alpha 3. I was like, that is the coolest robot. Holy shit, where'd he come from?
Yeah, like it is so fucking rad. Yeah. And because of that kind of growing notoriety, this would also be like the first Brave series to attempt getting international distribution during that time, which is kind of surprising, but like it was not successful when it first started. Media Blasters was the company that was originally doing the distribution, and they got pretty far along by like the first 25 episodes, even going so far as to include like an English dub, but it was unfortunately like after that halfway point, I get just because the sales for the DVDs were not hitting what they wanted, they just dropped it entirely. So like that was basically like the end of any official localization of GaoGaiGar for the longest time, which we would then just have to fall back on just usual like fan subbers and all that. Fortunately, Discotech did pick up the mantle, and now the whole series is fully distributed as of 2023, which includes Final.
Oh, thank you, Discotech, for picking up on anime that for nerds like us.
Thank you for picking up this Super Robot anime, which I feel, especially when it comes to Final, would be kind of like the herald for, I would say, the new benchmark for like what the minimum requirement for being bombastic your Super Robot anime needs to be in the 21st century.
Oh yeah, Final is a GaoGaiGar's already an over-the-top show. This one puts it into like Final puts it like into hyperdrive with how fucking crazy it gets.
Because like, and even with like the TV anime having like some wild stuff in its own right, like GaoGaiGar as a whole, you look at that anime and its OVA, and you can very clearly see how stuff from like the 2000s, like the various like Dynamic Pro, Super Robot adaptations, Gurren Lagann, etc., all these other stuff that is like very much designed as a tribute to what this anime did, or even like their own exaggerated tributes to like the 70s Super Robot shows they grew up with. Like there was a clear understanding going into the 2000s onward that like just doing exactly what the 70s did as a throwback would be too pedestrian. GaoGaiGar literally raised the bar for what like creators should be striving for in making a Super Robot anime, especially in the context of something like this where, you know, it still has a kid audience in mind.
Yeah.
So there's a certain purity to it that doesn't feel bogged down in any sort of subversiveness or cynicism. there's definitely some cleverness on the part of the writers, but it's definitely something where like it's more of like something that gets like a nice chuckle out of you when you're an adult and you catch on it. And it's like, oh, I see what you did there.
Yeah, this is definitely like, I feel like to its benefit, it is an all ages show. And I think it helps that a lot because it is very straightforward, it's very sincere, and as we keep mentioning, we appreciate sincerity in this podcast.
We do.
It's for the better because it is just such a very pure in just what it does.
Yeah, that's a lot of like our history for like the background of like this anime and the production and whatnot. Just as an addendum to the extra materials for GaoGaiGar, there is one more piece to the story following after Final, and that was a novel that served to bridge the gap between the GaoGaiGar and Better Man series called The King of Kings, GaoGaiGar vs. Better Man. It would be nice if this was an anime, but I guess this was the only way Yonetani could get the story made, but elements of it have been featured in Super Robot Wars 30. Anything else about it would spoil the rest of the GaoGaiGar series prior, so it's just being mentioned here for posterity. And now back to the show. So now we can get into, the biggest stars of this anime right here.
Let's go.
We got our primary mecha. This isn't all of them because between what we decided to cover on on the spoiler discussion when we get to it, and most of what I've written here in our non-spoiler section, we're not including every primary mecha because some of them have very specifically to do with the second half of the show where there is a noticeable shift in priorities and where the story is going compared to how it starts out. So we're basically covering, unfortunately, most of the important mecha are all unveiled in the first half. So we're going to talk about those right here instead. Mm-hmm. And that includes our titular robot itself, GaoGaiGar. Or I guess more specifically, we need to talk about the individual components that make up GaoGaiGar, because it is a very multi-layered robot at the end of the day. Barring even the pilot, which is under our primary characters, the core is Galleon, which is the big robot lion mentioned in our synopsis. But that robot lion can also transform into a humanoid form that, when piloted, is called Gaigar. It's a simple, pretty cool design, a white robot, the very smooth, handsome, brave robot face that we all recognize. And as part of the transformation, it still reminds you that its other form is a lion, because the lion face is now just a chest emblem, that's perfect. That's how you should always have it. When it comes to the rest of the components that make up our main robot, there are three semi-autonomous vehicles that have their own uses. They don't transform into their own individual robots. They are just strictly vehicles. There's the Gao Liner, which is essentially like a Shinkansen train. There is the Stealth Gao, which is just a big oversized stealth bomber aircraft. And then you have the drill Gao, I believe it's called. Yeah, which is they're drill tanks. Because say it with me, drill tanks are cool. They're not real vehicles, but that doesn't matter. This is a show for kids.
Yeah.
Kids love drill tanks and all that shit.
And they're right.
And the part that's even cool before these combine into the main robot is that GaoGaiGar can still utilize them in very small scale combinations. The Stealth Gao can actually attach to GaiGar's back and give it some amount of air mobility, and the Drill Gao can separate itself into two, because it has two drills on the front, and those can be mounted to GaiGar's arms, so it just has gigantic oversized drill fists.
Oh yeah. Also, another thing about when it transforms, it does something I don't think I see many other shows do, where there's a giant green tornado or energy surrounding it.
Mm-hmm.
That's a level of thought we're dealing with in the show. It's oh, here's something to protect GaoGaiGar while it's transforming or fusing together. It's all its parts together.
Yeah, it would just be excused away in any other anime as oh, this is just the color fill of the background that is designed to impart a sense of motion. But I think it's also clever as well when you look at it, because there are some subplots or like episodes in previous Brave series anime where the villain is literally studying the key animation of the combination sequence and looking for the exact moment to strike so that they can interrupt it.
Yeah.
So that's a funny acknowledgement of it, because yes, that finally leads us into when these parts all come together in what is known as final fusion. Final fusion activates.
Oh man.
GaoGaiGar like emits like the sort of like green tornado mist that allows it to be protected. As the parts come together, like the liner Gao becomes the shoulders of GaoGaiGar. Stealth Gao attaches to the back. The drill Gao separates and turns into GaoGaiGar's legs. Oh yeah, and also like as part of this as well with the stealth Gao, it has like these gigantic oversized like jet engine turbines on the underside. Yeah, those are actually GaoGaiGar's fists.
Yeah, that's what it is. It's just his fists. Don't worry about it.
Yeah, just as a brief aside, getting back to when I put together that real great GaoGaiGar, it was real fun when I was like watching these episodes again and seeing the transformation and just being like, yeah, the model got that exactly. Holy shit.
Oh, they must have been really detailed with the model.
Yeah, that's the effort that goes into forming GaoGaiGar. And at least once the robot has achieved this form, that's when it gets its most devastating attacks, such as Broken Magnum, which is the coolest name for a rocket punch ever.
Hell yeah.
Or at least one of them. It's at least top 3.
Until we get to Final Magnum.
Oh, yeah. And then, like, Protect Shade, which is just, like, a big ol', like, kind of, like, energy field barrier that is emitted from the left hand, which, by the way, there is a Protect Shade piece that is included with the real great GaoGaiGar, because, of course.
Of course there'd be one.
There's also some external weapons that do get used, such as the Dividing Driver can be best described as a oversized flathead screwdriver which can distort space, essentially creating like a bit of like pocket dimension of sorts. Okay, so picture something like you create a seam, like imagine the terrain of Earth is just like a flat picture. You cut a seam in it, and then you like Goatsy style just like pull that shit open. Okay, maybe that was a bit too far. I don't know.
It's like that you chose that was definitely a choice to make there to describe it. I don't know if I
fuck it. I'm leaving it in.
Yeah, no, just leave it in. That's fine. Yeah. People need to hear that.
Yeah, but no, it's like just like the cut in reality basically gets expanded open. Like the surrounding space around it doesn't get like crushed or anything. It's just like the sense of space is like warped in order to like create like this very convenient empty arena in which GaoGaiGar can fight. That's one of them. And then if there's like something where he needs to do the opposite, there's like the pliers, which are again just oversized pliers that have the ability to mend distorted space. When it comes to the end of a fight, GaoGaiGar has at the start a very powerful finishing move, Hell and Heaven, in which he takes the opposing power of both fists, because his right arm is all about like destructive power. That's where Broken Magnum is fired from. And the left arm, that is like all the defensive energy that is used for Protect Shade. You know, Hell and Heaven, hold both hands together, clasp them as like, which takes a lot of effort due to the opposing forces, and then just charge forward at the monster of the week to like grab its core and then tear it out. It's very dangerous though, especially on the part of GaoGaiGar itself, because of that amount of conflicting energy colliding with each other kind of puts a toll on it. But it's okay, because eventually they work up to like a better solution where it's like, now we got a new and better like finishing move for these fights. It's a giant fucking hammer.
Yeah. We got Goldie and Hammer,
which we'll explain a bit more, because that actually has to do with one of our robots. But that's basically the gist of GaoGaiGar and its features. Like this is a stacked super robot in terms of attack options, and it looks like a super robot to boot. And that's all with the fact that this fucking thing has like the most realistic combination mechanisms and transformations of any like transforming robot in this whole fucking franchise. It's absurd.
It is absurd, but it's great in just how it does it all. And you are going to see these attacks a lot, by the way, practically every episode.
You'll see them all the time, and you will have no complaints, really.
I sure didn't.
Same here. The remaining mecha that we have to talk about, these are like the other members of the robot force on 3G, which is like basically the abbreviation for Gutsy Geoid Guard, which we're basically going to do that. We're basically going to refer to it as 3G from here on out because that full name is kind of an odd one, to say the least. But as the show goes on, it's clear that, GaoGaiGar is like the main robot, but it's not the only one. There's Hyoryu and Enryu, which are like two rescue vehicles. One is blue, one is red. Hyoryu is the blue one, Enryu is the red one. And the whole idea is, because of the name, it's like, yes, one is the ice dragon, the other's the fire dragon. Like they're basically like fire trucks that kind of help with like search and rescue operations. They're the first robot you see in this anime where, like, if you were not initiated on the rest of the Brave series like we were back in the day, this is where you would first notice this looks a lot like Transformers.
That definitely stuck out with me. I was like, why do they look like Transformers? This is before I knew about the whole history behind it.
Before then, you just had like these Gen 1 Transformers looking things that got left behind or something. But they at least got like some cool stuff of their own. Mainly, their own combination sequence known as symmetrical docking. We mentioned all the way back in our overview episode of the Brave series, we talked about like the lineup of Brave X Kaiser, that there were the Raker brothers that had like their own combination sequence. Hyoryu and Enryu's symmetrical docking is like the successor to that idea, much like everything else in GaoGaiGar is probably where most people would they would probably first recognize this, because of the robots basically turning into the left and right halves of their combined super robot known as Choryujin. It's pretty fucking great. And the part that always makes it especially is, not just getting to see the mechanisms for how they turn into the left and right halves of the bigger robot, but just when it completes and you see Choryujin striking the pose, it's just, you hear it shout its name as hard as it fucking can. Also, I have definitely seen quite a few funny, symmetrical docking related jokes in my time. One of which being like a Super Robot Wars 4 Coma, where the symmetrical docking sequence is just replaced with two girls squishing their boobs together.
I'm not saying that's where I heard the context of symmetrical docking before, but maybe. Anyways,
it's great.
Yeah, it's great.
And when it comes to weapons and attacks, their main kind of range weapon that they have is the the extending ladders that you would get on a fire truck, and basically having it as a kind of a side mounted cannon, which when they're Choryujin, they get to use both of theirs at the same time. But the last thing that Choryujin can use that is exclusive to them is apparently their own super weapon finishing move called Eraser X, I believe it's called.
I think so.
I almost, before we had gone back to watching this anime for the spoiler discussion, for some reason I kept thinking it was called Eraserhead. That was a very different thing. But yeah, it's much like every kind of big tool type weapon that GaoGaiGar has. Yeah, Eraser X is just a gigantic pencil eraser.
God, I fucking love that they don't even try to hide how fucking toyetic these designs are. It's like, nah, this shit is, don't you want to buy this toy? And it's like, I do kind of want to buy this toy. Yeah, actually.
Check out this eraser weapon. It can destroy enemies down to the subatomic level.
Sick.
And it's like, yeah, that's awesome. That totally justifies why it looks like a pencil eraser. Hyoryu and Enryu are pretty great characters all around. They're brothers, but they get along. They stick to their job, and because this is the first of the robots in the show where it's they are clearly super AI programmed and all that, is that it is very funny when you hear dialogue about how it's when they are doing their job as part of 3G, that it is they acknowledge as much of in their own words, that they are programmed to like never run away or like show cowardice of any kind. As if you needed to be reminded anymore about what this show's theme was. But even cooler robots await, such as Volfog, the final of the Brave series ninja robots, a tradition that started all the way in J-Decker, and I'm pretty much continued all the way up to here. Volfog is fucking amazing. Because his Japanese voice is the same voice actor that would play Kamina in Tengen Toppa Gurren Lagann. He's obviously playing a very different type of character by comparison, but that is true. You can look it up. But otherwise, Volfog's pretty cool because of another transforming robot that has a ninja-like motif, dark purple, transforms into a pretty sleek car, and doesn't just do like his stealth and espionage tasks alone, because he's got two backup support vehicles, Gun Glue, which is essentially a helicopter, and Gundober, which is like a motorcycle.
And as you probably expected, yes, they do in fact combine together into a bigger ninja robot.
Yep, where 3 becomes 1, and the name of this combination. Big Volfog.
That's right. It's just Big Volfog.
Shame that they couldn't push it any further, that we could not have gotten bigger and then eventually biggest Volfog. But I think that would have required to have like an even larger amount of like the cast dedicated to more ninja robots.
I'm just replaying that one Jeff Gerstmann moment in my head. The one where he just goes, bigger, bigger. That's how bigger. That's me with Volfog. Just make it bigger. Keep making him bigger.
Yeah. Just make him big as what Gurren Lagann eventually gets up to in its own show. Yeah, we're basically pitching a completely different type of anime than the one Volfog is actually in.
Oh, yeah.
Because, yes, he is still ultimately support, but, he's a very important support robot, especially when he is also tasked with providing basically, like, bodyguard backup service for like one of our key human characters, which makes sense because of him being a ninja. He's got to have stealth capabilities, which means he can always be like within an earshot to kind of assist as necessary without drawing too much attention. Oh man, like I know there's like not too many like plastic model kits for like the for GaoGaiGar. I know there's the actual GaoGaiGar and Choryujin. I wish there was one for Volfog. I would have fucking loved that. I'd have bought it instantly, especially if it came with Gun Glue and Gundober.
Yeah.
But there is another robot to get into, one that also has a real grade Bandai kit, by the way, and that is Goldimarg, a giant orange-colored tank of a robot. No, literally tank. That is his vehicle form. It is the weirdest shape for a tank, admittedly. And his personality is extremely boorish, mostly because it is explicitly modeled after one of like our main human cast members. His important role is to act as the right arm for GaoGaiGar in a literal sense, as it turns into a right arm and detaches part of itself to reveal that it has the Goldian hammer.
And
because this is a powerful fucking weapon that GaoGaiGar cannot wield it normally with its normal hands. It needs the assistance of a bigger robot hand that attaches to its right arm.
And we were talking about it's like other final attack. This is its second. This is GaoGaiGar's second final attack.
Big ol' hammer. And the crazy part too is how like the hammer itself, it looks like one of those like toy Pico hammers.
Yeah.
You know, like what I'm talking about.
Yeah, I do.
But that kind of belies the fact that Goldimarg, when it's in its hand form attached to GaoGaiGar, is that it has like the two hook things that you use whenever you're trying to pull out like a nail, which is what is done because as part of the as a safer way of getting to the core of the monsters of the week, the Zonderbeasts, rather than using Hell and Heaven to forcefully pull the core out, what they do is they just hammer in a nail to where the core is, take like the hooks on the hand to grab the underside of like the nail's head to rip it out, and then finally use the hammer to hit the beast one last time, shouting disappear into light. Hikari ni nare, as it does exactly that. It disappears into particles of light. It's fucking brilliant. Like our hero, Gai Shisho, when he is doing this, he is shouting it with every fucking fiber of his being. One instance, I forget which, but I seem to recall there being a detail of him almost passing out when he was like trying to scream it out just right and had to keep doing multiple takes, but he would not stop till he got it right.
What a fucking legend. Oh, right. We never mentioned Guy's voice actor, did we? Or we didn't get to his character yet. Never mind. We'll get to it when we get to his character.
Yeah, we'll get there soon. There is one more robot. Yes. It's Mike Saunders the 13th. He's going to be a major focus of our spoiler discussion just to get ahead of it because this fucking robot, man.
This fucking robot. I know you especially have lots of feelings about him.
Well, it's more like memories at this point, I would say, because it was so long ago when I first had these feelings. But because what we are talking about with Mike Saunders is a fucking toy mascot like robot that looks like it came out of a different anime. Not at all proportioned in any way like the other mecha that we have talked about thus far in like their humanoid robot forms. A very square, stocky looking motherfucker with like big Super Mario eyes and like flies around on its own little hovercraft. And is really good friends with all the kid characters in the show. But trust us, there's more to him, actually.
Yes. Yeah, there is a character to him. He is not that bad. He is, in fact, he gets good. Let's just put it that way.
Dare I say, he gets to being one of the absolute best.
Yes, in fact.
Which is baffling.
You just have to trust us on this.
Yeah, there's basically like the robots that we really wanted to talk about that kind of have to do with the first half of the anime, considering that when we get into our spoiler section, that's kind of covering the end of that first half, more or less. Like, there's others I really would have liked to talk about, but again, it gets into that part where, you know, the show knows to keep itself fresh, considering that it's going for 49 episodes. That like major shakeups get introduced. But we can transition over to talking about our characters.
Yeah.
We can talk about like the characters that are associated with 3G itself. You know, we have two protagonists essentially. And we might as well start with like the first one, and that is Mamoru Amami, who is our kid protagonist, as you are expected to have in all the other anime in the Brave series. Just a bright-eyed, very friendly 9-year-old boy, though unlike all those other kid protagonists, has a lot more mysterious origins compared to them, considering he was delivered by a mechanical lion. And even when battles with the Zonders are taking place, he actually factors into the conclusion of those fights quite heavily, because as part of his mysterious origins, you know, like whenever he sees that like a Zonder core has been retrieved, just almost trance-like, basically just goes into kind of like a glowing green status, grows wings, and then just like casts a purification spell on the core of the Zonder, because the truth about those cores is that they are actually human beings that have basically been warped into those monsters by like evil means on part of the villains. So yes, he is not the tag-along type of character, which is really good, and like even before you get to see the really heroic shit that he ends up doing near the end of the series, it's like you still get the sense from like episode 1 that like he has an important role, and the fact that he's able to do this while not being, you know, like directly in charge of a robot itself, the same way that like past Brave series protagonists work. It's like Yuta in J. Decker, for instance, you know, he was also involved, but that was involved in a very hands-on way with like giving orders to the robots. You know, he was put in charge of an entire police force of robots. Here, you know, the one that's really in charge of GaoGaiGar and doing the heavy lifting on the fighting is Gai Shisho, voiced by Nobuyuki Hiyama. Yep, we're getting that out of the way. Yep. And I really do want to say that, especially during this time, the fact that Hiyama voiced two protagonists in the Brave series, first one was in Might Gain, second was in this. I cannot help but feel like that was a huge motivating factor in him being chosen to play the voice of Link in the Ocarina of Time.
I wouldn't be shocked because that man has a hell of a vocal range because Might Guide is a little more, he's not as yelly as Guy Shisho. Guy Shisho is Nobuyuki at his most yelling. He is practically shouting every episode.
Yeah. And also the other thing I was getting at is, this is an anime about courage, and Link is the representative, the patron saint of courage in the Zelda franchise.
Yeah.
It's kind of why, not to say that I am still like wishing for like something like a Zelda anime even now, but if there were to be an opportunity and they did not cast Nobuyuki Hiyama to play as Link, I would say the prospects of that project would be utterly worthless.
They should just go back to having voice Link again. I agree, though.
Even though it's all grunts and shouts because he's a silent protagonist, it still adds so much to how I've always perceived Link. Like in that franchise.
Yeah.
But all the while, with Guy specifically in this show, it's like, yes, as you said, he is very shouty, like hot-blooded, yelling all the time. And he's doing all this with piloting GaoGaiGar while being a cyborg. So pretty rad design, all things considered. Even going with the fact that like when he's in his full combat getup, it's like his hair is especially wild.
Oh, yeah.
Like, Normally he's got like pretty like long, kind of straight, smooth hair. But like once he is in full battle mode, like gets like kind of like his helmet on and everything, like his hair is just sticking out like crazy. He's got like two mechanical like bangs kind of going down like the sides of his face, which he could grab those and then proceed to like whip his hair around in a circle 3 times to engage his own hyper mode. Like, that makes sense. But he's great. He is like a big reason for why anime especially works as being like for all ages. Is because while you have Mamoru on one side as like the kid protagonist that is like intended to be sort of like the audience surrogate to an extent, that you also have a character like Guy that is a lot more appealing to someone that would be much older and wants like a more traditional hot-blooded super robot protagonist.
Yeah.
And it also doubles as well, I think, even for the younger kids, where that could be like a more adult-like figure that they can look up to as someone that they think is cool.
Yeah.
Like, it just works, but it also helps in the case of this show's plot that it understands as well that, like, that Mamoru is still ultimately, like, the real protagonist anyway, and that, like, Guy is like exists more to serve as like the true embodiment of courage that we should all aspire to.
Yeah, because Guy is a very static character, and I don't mean that negatively. I mean, Guy from episode 1 is still a guy from episode like 50. He is the same person, the same personality, but that's okay because he's such like an everything about him is so intense. And it's like you said, it's like, oh, no, this is the cool, hot-blooded older brother. And Mamoru is the one who gets, like, all the actual character development.
There's still plenty of other characters at 3G that, like, get a bit more development and are still very helpful to Mamoru and Guy's efforts. One of them being Mikoto Utsuki, who is Guy's girlfriend, helps out like on like the command bridge of 3G, even though Guy suffered like an accident in orbit that basically required him to be rebuilt as a cyborg. That still doesn't stop, that still doesn't stop the two from having something resembling like a kind of a high school sweetheart relationship, or I guess more college age, I guess at this point, because they are young adults. Mikoto's she's also the one that like whenever the approval is given for Final Fusion, you are much like a lot of things in this anime that are going to be repeated a lot, you are always going to see her like smash the glass over the button that activates Final Fusion for Guy. Like that is always going to happen. God bless her hands, really. Like I even remembered as well that there was actually, I think, like one moment during like a Final Fusion activation sequence where she briefly pauses for a moment as she's about to slam her fist on the button, and it's like, and when she does actually slam it down, it is suddenly way more forceful than it was prior. So yeah, this anime for its 49 episodes at least knows how to mix things up at just the right time. The remaining the human characters on the side of 3G, there's a few to get into very, very briefly. There's Kotaro Taiga, who's basically like the commander of the operation. If Guy is like the cool older brother that you look up to as a paragon of courage, Taiga's definitely like the cool uncle that you also look up to. Mm-hmm. He's very friendly and like cares a lot about his employees, both like in his above ground job and at 3G. He is also very boisterous and shouty when giving out orders.
He's going to tell you to give 120% in anything.
And also, if you so much as try and like get into a tussle with him, he will beat your ass with a golf club. That is true.
That is true.
That did happen.
Yeah.
There was an entire episode where humans were getting brainwashed, and like he had to basically fight them off in the command center. And the reason he's able to fight like that is because I guess GaoGaiGar had, due to its popularity, gotten like drama CDs that acted as extra world building.
Oh.
And I think one of them got into the details about Taiga's previous work before his current position at 3G, that he was actually in a Super Sentai style combat squad, and his main weapon of choice even back then was a golf club.
What? You know what? Fine, I accept it.
Yeah.
That's all.
Yeah, this fucking black-suited, blonde-haired, sideburn motherfucker that is super eccentric. Yeah, I buy that he would have that as his backstory.
Okay. All that to explain why he used the golf club the one time in the TV show. Sure.
Yeah, and I'd say still not the most eccentric character on our task force.
No.
Because there's Leo Shisho, who is Guy's father, the one responsible for rebuilding him as a cyborg, has Einstein hair, very goofy looking, has rocket roller skates that he uses to just zip around all over the place. He has a brother, which we'll talk about in our spoiler section.
Yeah.
But then there's Swan White, who is, like, for most of the show, our American representative until we get to see more of the actual Americans, because 3G is actually a global organization. It's like a branch of what is called the Earth Defense Brigade. You know, like, basically whatever renaming of your Earth Defense Force you want to go with, it's basically that. And Swan was basically transferred over from the American branch. You could tell that she is clearly, her voice actor is clearly doing the whole, speaking in Japanese but accenting it in just a weird enough way to make it clear that this is, that this is an American. She's blonde, obviously.
And she's going to throw in random English, just so you know.
And then there's Geki Hyuma, who is a big burly guy, the other member of like the main 3G crew that actually has combat experience like Taiga. And he is even more gutsy and like and hot-blooded, I think, than anyone else, especially because he still has not let his muscles go away whatsoever. And this is the guy who has his personality used as the basis for Goldie Marg, which leads to some comedy bits in which Goldie Marg very often likes to act stubbornly, much in the same way that Geki Hyuma already is. Even Goldie Marg has enough awareness at times where he goes, I know I'm stubborn, but that's only because I was modeled after someone that was equally as stubborn.
Yeah.
And it's obviously designed to piss him off. There's some more characters, but like, there's a lot of them. This is like the most I could think to get away with like as quick of a description as possible for these guys compared to like our main cast, really. There are the Zonders, which we could get into also very briefly, because for the first half of this series, they're all led by Pastor, EL01, which could be best described as a big mechanical face that kind of warps around like when talking. It's always accompanied by a lot of like kind of like light strobe effects because that their layer is that dark, and he gives his orders out to the 4 Machine Kings. Because you got to have your 4 Heavenly King variants of some kind, of which they also, all the Zonders, you would think that because of like their faction's name that like they would all have their names starting with the letter Z, but no, they all start with P. There's Primata, Polonaise, Pinchanon, and Pizza.
Yeah, we're not making that last one up.
Just Pizza.
Just Pizza.
Even his human disguise makes him look like a hobo pizza delivery guy.
All their fucking designs are really off the wall and kind of crazy. Like, one of them is like dressed up as a sailor.
Yeah, Pinchinon is like the sailor looking dude with like a weird clownish face and a really annoying laugh. Polonaise arguably the most normal because he just looks like an old sea captain. And then Primata is just she's just constantly doing pirouettes because she's like disguised as a ballerina a lot of the times. And of those 4 Machine Kings, 2 of them are actually going to have like new updated roles when they get into the second half. Not gonna say who, but that becomes important when dealing with like the second half's main antagonist, which I'll just give the name, the 31 Machine Primevals, which banger.
Right.
That's a good fucking name for a villainous faction.
Hell yeah,
because they're basically the real source of the Zonders at the end of the day, and just kind of like, you know, if you thought Pazder and his Machine Kings were bad, like these dudes show up and actually start raising the stakes quite a lot. That's the extent for like the characters, really. There was like a lot to get through. So why do we recommend this?
Why do we recommend
this? As we always have to ask the question every episode.
Mm-hmm.
Simply put, because it's still the peak of the Brave series. Yeah. And even I could say that confidently as someone that has like watched most of the series prior to it in recent years, because normally I'm the kind of person where like if I see someone that's like talking about like something that they really like as part of a franchise, I'd just call it the best, but there's no real indication that they've engaged in or in anything else like outside of that within that franchise. That makes me think, well, logically, how can you say it's the best when saying something's the best implies there is something comparative about it? But even having watched most of the other stuff, it's like, nah, I wouldn't blame them in this case. GaoGaiGar is still peak. It is genuinely a fantastic culmination of all the franchise's like ideas into an extremely bombastic and exciting story.
Yeah, I can't really speak much because I don't have much experience with the other series, but GaoGaiGar feels like it's just everything that was great about it's like taking everything that was good about the Brave series and just putting it all together and cranking it up like 120%.
Yeah, and just like past Brave series anime, you know, like this is why, like, whenever I've brought up like top 3 for the franchise, like I've always kind of gone this, then Dagarn, then J-Decker, and that is because the commonality between all 3 is that they're generally the most successful at punching above their weight in being not just like a kids show, but like something that is really appealing to people beyond that demographic and hitting all ages.
Yeah,
because of like message or theme that they try to get across, whether it's Dagarn's well conveyed like sort of environmentalism message and like constant ever-present narrative, or J-Decker being so bold in a kid's show to ask very poignant questions about the nature of AI and the human soul. In GaoGaiGar's case, a lot of it does come from stuff to do with like the cleverness on like the writers and animators. The fact that even for something that is still following a Monster of the Week formula, they still know how to spice things up a lot. Because of the fact that like the story takes a massive shift with like new antagonists and support characters in its latter half, but also even moments that I talked about where they will apply subtle changes to like existing key animation to like just make things feel fresh, or just other fun details they'll slip in as like a blink and you miss it thing for like the more grown-up viewers that will be able to like kind of catch the nuance of it. That's really like the best part about it, really, and why it's so often recommended even with its long length, because of how the Brave series has always been a very long-running like each individual series is designed to be around 49 episodes on average. That it knows how to pace itself out, and that it makes it clear to you at like several episodes before the end of an arc that it's like, yes, we are building up to this moment. The Zonders are running out of material that they can use to turn people into new Zonder beasts. You know that we can't keep this up forever, so we're just going to admit it and like prepare you for something new. Yeah, it's just real good, and obviously, if that all sounds good to you and you watch GaoGaiGar and love it, goes without saying what you should immediately do after that.
Yeah.
And that is watch GaoGaiGar Final.
Oh, yeah.
At least in that case, it's an 8-episode OVA, so you'll be able to get through it very fast. but it is a direct sequel. So even if you wanted to take the short way out, you can't. You'll be left very confused as to why things are looking noticeably different, even compared to where the original TV anime was ending up at the end. It's a good time all around. It goes without saying that, like, even if you don't want to put all the time into, like, watching the 3 recommended Brave series anime that I constantly bring up, just settle on GaoGaiGar.
Yeah.
It'll be fine.
Yeah, I'll just add one more thing. Like, the best thing about GaoGaiGar is that about the writers being clever, like, I think it's kind of great how it starts off as a typical monster of the week, but then eventually, like, in the halfway point, it kind of grows into more than just that, like adding more, like, I guess, serious plottings, but still not losing that all ages flavor that makes it, like, so special. It just comes together really well in the end, and it just makes you feel good. I think that's the best thing about GaoGaiGar is it makes you feel good and motivated. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it definitely. I still fondly remember a lot of, like, kind of like where I was at the time when I first watched this anime, of all things, like just over a decade ago by this point, and it was like such a fun time. Like, it was one of those things where it's like I just got motivated to binge all of it when I was in a week in between semesters in college, and just being like, this was one of the best ways I could have possibly spent that week. Really,
I think I had the same experience too.
Yeah, funny how that is, where it's like, because of, I guess, just because of, like, how we were able to, and when we were able to get it, that, like, we obviously could not watch this when we were at the age that the show was kind of initially intended for. But the fact it still works on us even as adults is, like, proof to its quality. So where to watch it then? Well, fortunately, because this is GaoGaiGar and it is significantly more well known than the other Brave series anime, although some of those definitely do need to get the same recognition at some point. With GaoGaiGar, thanks to Discotech, it is fully, like, distributed, localized everywhere. So, and because it was very recent, as of 2023, that means the Blu-rays and their prices are, like, still relatively reasonable, all things considered. Like, they are not so far out of print at a point where you're having to pay, like, obscene amounts of money just to get a hold of one volume. You can still find them relatively easily if you want to go the physical route. And digitally, like, Crunchyroll is basically, like, the main option for, like, for watching the TV anime. I forgot to check if they had Final as well, but I know that they have, like, the TV anime in its entirety, including the first 25 episodes English dub from the Media Blasters distribution, which, you know, if you're curious, you could check that out for maybe a bit or two. I don't know. I think the voice of Yami Yugi was Taiga or something like that. What was it? It's Dan Green, right?
Yeah, I think it's Dan Green.
Yeah, I think I remember seeing that, and I'm like, okay, that's inspired casting. I could see how, you know, if you took the 4Kids roster of voice actors and gave them a not lame 4Kids localization, you could get them to cook.
I will say one thing about this show being on Crunchyroll. It is unfortunately region locked, but
yeah, that's unfortunate, especially because it's region locked, as well as, you know, you kind of have to. It's not one of those free shows that you can watch unless you have like a subscription. But then again, like, a lot of the old catalog on there is anyway, and that depends if, like, you know, if you're already getting mileage out of the service anyway. You know, and paying that monthly fee, then you can just get in on it, you know. And also, you can have a laugh at the idea that a kids anime from the 90s would be classified as TV-14 by American standards.
Like, fucking sure. I mean, why?
Oh,
well. I just want to add one more thing. It's region locked, but you know what? Where it's not region locked, it's all on YouTube, actually, along with Final.
Oh yeah, that's a very good point.
So if it's region locked at your place, don't worry. There's still other places to watch it.
Plenty of other places to get it, and hell, you could still sail the high seas for everything if you really want to. It's all up to you. But with that out of the way, we got to get into our second half, where we got something big to discuss for today's spoiler section.
Oh, we do. 3 whole episodes this time.
Yeah, although with how we're going to talk about it, it'll probably be more like 2.5.
Yeah. You'll all understand if you hear us talk about it, or if you watch it yourself.
Yeah, because goes without saying, If all this intrigues you, fucking watch GaoGaiGar right this instant, turn off this episode, or stick around if you're very curious about what we have to talk about and think that it might be the thing that gives you that little extra push to check it out on your own. So we'll see you on the other side, everyone.
See y'all soon.
All right. Spoiler discussion approved. Spoiler discussion. Program drive.
When did you think of that? When did you think of that one up?
Since we finished the last episode recording.
Damn. All right. Yeah. We're talking about the Mike 13 episodes today.
Yes, this is episodes 23 to 25. Basically, like a short 3-episode arc. Like when it comes to the introduction of like the other members of 3G's kind of like robots, is that they always get like a good couple or few episodes to really get you introduced proper to what they have to offer to the battles and like how they'll fit into the new status quo. And Mike Saunders the 13th is a very interesting one, to say the least. This is a story arc that I can best describe as, when I saw it start, I was like, what the fuck are you doing? And then when it got to the end, I was like, I will no longer criticize you. Do what you wish. Yeah, this episode starts out in America, at NASA, actually.
You know it's America because somebody has a shirt with American flag on it.
And saying actually surprising amounts of like coherent English lines, even though they are like, you know, Japanese people that are like reading them out. What is it? What is the meme? How it always goes? Be the American the Japanese think you are. Because NASA's doing a test of something that is happening in orbit. You see like the silhouettes of what looks like an entire encirclement of like 12 or 13 different robots around the moon. And like emitting some kind of like sonic blast. And if there's one thing that I think this anime absolutely gets right about what goes on in NASA, is that when something successful happens, everyone in the control room has the biggest pop off ever.
They're so fucking excited.
Like, yeah. The experiment works, and the professor that was in charge of it is Liger Shisho, who clearly has some scheme of his own. As he exits the room, pulls off his shades to reveal another pair of shades underneath. This fucking anime, I swear.
They had to know. They had to know how dumb this was.
Yeah, especially because this is Leo's brother we're talking about, and he's even more of a weirdo, I'm going to say, in looks compared to even Leo. Basically, like after the opening plays, which is, you know, still fantastic. Never skip it. It is always a banger.
It is one of the hypest anime openings out there.
Get like a transfer taking place where like two submarines meet off the shore of Japan. Liger's on one as he's transferring from America to deliver a new robot to 3G. Leo and Guy are there to meet him, obviously, because they're family, even though these two brothers really do like to fight a lot. And it's been years since I last watched GaoGaiGar, actually. I really wanted to get this out here. I finally had noticed something, actually, about Liger's voice actor, and by extension, Leo's, because it's actually the same person voicing for two. And that is Kenichi Ogata, I believe his name is. That name is important, because he had his start actually very early in the 70s doing voice work on many super robot anime, including like various like Dynamic Pro anime from like the Mazinger series, Get a Robo, or as well as other super robot shows from like the end of the 70s. But it's Liger's voice delivery specifically that tipped me off, because it is the same voice actor as Ebisumaru in the Ganbare Goemon series.
Yeah.
Which explains a lot why the both of them are so immature.
I was like, man, why does this voice sound so familiar? Then I was like, oh, that's why. It's the exact same tone and everything as Ebisumaru.
Yeah. Leo at least does a better job, I think, of disguising that. Yeah. Liger just sounds so much like Ebisumaru to a fault. Especially when he's just is yelling on his opening shot as he just bursts through the door riding on his rocket skateboard.
Like, he's like a stereotypical 90s American, or whatever the Japanese think a 90s American looks like at the time.
And he is such an old man doing it. That's the especially goofy part. Yeah, so this transfer is happening all the while a storm is happening above ground, obviously being manipulated by the Zonders themselves. You mentioned as much like in the notes that like anytime that we gotta like see what the Zonders are kind of getting up to, scheming and whatnot, is I'm fortunately not affected by the flashing lights. I think the part where I would be more concerned is if like the strobe light effects was like doing like the red and blue alternating, because that was obviously like the issue that came about with like the Porygon episode from Pokemon.
Yeah.
That this at least is like kind of in that acceptable range, but at the same time, you also realize very quickly that, oh yeah, you don't see this in TV anime anymore. You just don't.
No, anytime they do, they just kind of like lower the brightness or something, so it doesn't hurt your eyes as much. But it is, I forgot how overwhelming the strobing lights were in this anime. It is almost constant.
You're always going to be contending with it anytime Pazdar has to speak.
Oh yeah.
Meanwhile, what's Mamoru getting up to? Because we have all these other moving parts going on in the episode, and we have a scene that has predicted the custom Robo series by a whole 2 years. Although it's simple RC kind of robot battles going on. Or whatever like that. Very simple stuff, but I do like that Mamoru's robot that he is using is just a chibi version of GaoGaiGar in its design. Like, that's cute.
Yeah.
And nice that like he's still able to get out and play with his friends, even though it looks like fucking typhoon season out there currently. He even says as much looking at it, that it feels like the kind of weather that the Zonders would like or something like that. Mm-hmm. And I mean, he's not wrong. He kind of has a purpose. But there's something more pressing. The container with the CR Robo that Liger was going to be giving to to everyone at 3G. It's unlocked and empty.
Oh no.
I could only hope it was simply stolen and didn't just escape on its own to get into some kid cartoon bullshit. Oh
no.
Yes, this is what happens. This is when you get your first proper introduction to Mike peeking into like the indoor stadium that like the kids are playing their robot battles, and then just shouting in English like greetings and whatnot, and wanting to play with him because he is just acting like a big fucking child. Yeah, I am not exaggerating when I say that I got like really worried and critical about this when I first watched it. I know you were not like nearly as harsh on it as I were, but that's just because it's like, even with all the other kid anime isms that were going on in the first 22 episodes, they felt a lot more restrained.
Yeah.
So I was more like, in those instances with even stuff like the dividing driver or Eraserhead or even Mamoru's involvement, I was like, okay, I can buy that this show is working towards something that it like the weird kitty stuff going on in here is not like detracting from it. Yeah. Mike 13 was the first time I felt actively worried that it was going to do that.
I think for me, I kind of just rolled my eyes at it, but also like I think it helps that I kind of got spoiled at his like transformation later, because I saw GaoGaiGar in the Super Robot Wars game first before I watched the show.
That makes sense. Okay, yeah, you definitely fared a bit better having like the benefit of foreknowledge.
Yeah, because like watching it now, I'm like, oh, to be fair, I still remember watching this all the way back then and thinking, oh, he's the annoying mascot character. Oh no, is this what we have to deal with now?
Yeah, especially when the big fight with the Zonderbeast in this episode happens, where GaoGaiGar's in a pinch, kind of being pinned down between multiple tornadoes, that Mike tries to get you hyped up thinking that he is going to help him, because anyone that is a friend of Mamoru, because he quickly becomes friends with Mamoru for obvious reasons, believes is that like anyone that's a friend of him, of Mamoru, is a friend of Mike. So he's gonna go help, but yeah, his big hero moment just gets fucking deflated as he goes into the tornado and it spits him back out. Fucking idiot.
You're not making a good impression, buddy.
The most he actually helped was getting those kids out of that stadium before any potential like structural damage could have happened. That's it. But at least the battle is still won at the end of the day, even without Mike's help. Like they reveal where the beast is. They get approval to use the Goldion hammer, and kind of like another example of how like the animators know how to like mix things up just enough that, you know, when it's time to use the thing that obviously is done with key animation, that they are not just using it as is. Like, you get bits in between the usual animations for when the golden hammer is used, where GaoGaiGar is, like, twirling it in front of him in order to deflect the Zonder's tornadoes, just so it could get close enough to, like, hammer the damn thing.
Mm-hmm.
Like, that part is, like, a really nice detail that reminds me how much I appreciated the way fights go.
Yeah.
Like, in this anime, just the way that they managed to be so visceral, and even when you are getting to see the gorgeous, well put together key animation for the special attacks, that they also know how to, like, add something new in a very minor way just to keep you on your toes.
It's just enough to make you want to pay attention to the fights, just to see like what kind of little details or moments they're going to add to it.
And then with the Golden Hammer successfully defeating the Zonder Beast, getting the core out, I do like this detail that feels like a very sudden joke. You know, Mamoru doing his usual thing of, like, using his purification spell to turn the Zonder core back into the human it once was, that in which it is revealed to be a weather lady that you actually saw near the beginning of the episode. And apparently, like, she became vulnerable to the four Machine Kings turning her into a Zonder because she was getting shit for the forecast shit that being inaccurate all week.
Well,
like, said inaccurate forecasts arguably being done, I would have thought, like, by the Machine Kings themselves. So it's like it is real. Like, that is the common thing that you pick up on with a lot of the humans that get turned into the Zonders, is that they're almost all just adults that are having to deal with so much bullshit in their lives.
Yeah.
And a lot of that bullshit is something where it's like, if you happen to share that same occupation, or even if you don't, if you just know what it's like being working class, it's just, you understand like the pain that they are going through, and it's like, oh, their complaints are just too real.
it's a very adult moment. It's just like, oh yeah, I get, especially nowadays where I'm like, oh, I get that. I get that feeling.
Yeah, I'm genuinely sorry that you have to put up with this shit. And so that is our first episode involving Mike Saunders the 13th. So what about our next episode? Episode 24, Protection Disabled, in which it is more fair to say it is half an episode because we have a recap for the first half. This is one of those things where it was funny when I got to this, because of, I knew going in that we wanted to talk about these 3 episodes, considering that, like, it was like the right length to kind of get into talking about, you know, Mike's introduction to the team, as it were. But I had forgotten exactly how the middle episode had gone. It was kind of funny how convenient it was for both of us that we didn't need to take that much notes about what goes on in the first half, because it's just reminding us, like it is reminding any other viewer back in the day, about these are the robots in 3G. This is what they do.
It's literally just a recap episode. And it's like, oh yeah, this was such a different era of TV. There were no streaming programs. There was no way to, like, catch episodes you missed. So you gotta have episodes like this every now and then, I guess.
Best option you had was if you still had, like, a really good VHS recorder and were, like, willing to, like, program in the time and date to, like, actually have it record the episode when you weren't there. You know, it was a very, very different time. Yeah, it's a really handy way of getting you reminded of, oh yeah, this is Hyoryu, Enryu, Volfog, and Goldymark. This is what they do. And it's obviously capped off with them trying to, like, ask Mike, okay, so what can you do? And then obviously turns out can't really do much. But at least things get a bit more interesting when you get into the second half proper, because you do get stuff with, like the friendship between Mike and Mamoru kind of, like, deepening a little as Mamoru gets a ride home on Mike. And, you know, even as much as, like, back then when I was having misgivings about, like, Mike's introduction, I do think these days even, like, scenes like this work a lot better, and is, like, shows that it's very important for the intended demographic of this anime. That you have something that is, like, kind of important for the kid character that, like, your audience is supposed to, like, relate with the most. It works very well, kind of showing how sweet of a boy Mamoru is, all things considered, Whereas, like, even if Mike at this point is not proving to be a super powerful robot the same way that GaoGaiGar and the others are, that he doesn't mind. He still sees him as a good person, as someone valuable.
Yeah, I think this part really helps warm up to Mike just a little as well. Or at least this current form of Mike.
Yeah, before things take a hard swerve deep into the night as Mike and Liger are doing some espionage, searching through the 3G battle records in secret, which doubles as another form of recap because it literally roll calls every single Zonderbeast that 3G has fought up to this point, all the way back to the first fucking episode, because this is what Liger is ultimately trying to work towards. Like, yes, he's attempting to have Mike transferred over to 3G as like kind of part of the like a work arrangement with a larger organization, but deep down it's like, nah, he wants to get what info he can about what 3G has been able to accomplish so he could take it back to America, because again, be the American the Japanese think you are works on 2 levels in this story arc. And even Volfog has been taking notes on what is going on. That is like, as a stealthy ninja would, he is being very careful and observing every last detail before making any certain moves about what is happening, because something's up with Mike and Liger for obvious reasons. And like the finale of this episode, you get to see a new hint of like, oh, there's also another thing that's up with Mike, even beyond what seems to be him just like almost like on autopilot recovering 3G's battle records because he's speaking in a very monotone robot voice at that time. Yeah. But he's back to his usual self when the electric light parade is happening. All the kids are going there, including like Mamoru's like classmate and like sweetheart Hana, which I gotta say, I know this is a running gag thing that the show has going on, but I think she's doing this whole walking her dog thing wrong. Yeah. Like, Yosef's a big fucking boy. Like, he's big enough that she could ride on him easily like a steed.
That dog is like as big as you, girl. Come on. Dude, it'd be a fun mount.
Yeah. She at least drags along like another classmate, Kaido, who's a character that you only like very briefly see show up just mysteriously like in the first half, but it's clear why, because he has more of a prominent role going into the second half. Yeah. So like him, Hana, Mamoru, they get to go to the electric light parade. Mike is also there getting up to some dumb shenanigans as well.
Having fun of the parade, yelling out, "Oh my god!" Because, you know, get it? He's American.
He says this as well as he's getting tangled up in the lights of the parade floats going through. Oh yeah, and it's also not just the kids. You know, like Guy, Mikoto, and Swan are there as well. You know, and all of them being there is like kind of important because there's no Zonderbeast fight this episode, but that's not going to stop Pizza from trying to like get any problem elements out of the way quickly, which means he's going to try and kill a fucking kid.
Fucking jeez, man.
Yeah, but hey, we almost had a child assassination. Almost. If it were not for the power of rock, as like a giant, like one of those like swinging like galleon ships, you know, like those type of rides that are eventually designed to kind of loop on themselves, like dislodges and is about to land on the crowd where Mamoru is, until suddenly a sonic blast just disintegrates it. You see what looks like the neck of a guitar, and then an even cooler robot as it like is in silhouette jumps onto a floating platform and then rockets off into the night sky. Man, who the hell's that badass? No way it could be someone as lame as Mike Saunders the 13th. Sarcasm.
If I didn't get spoiled about Mike Saunders, this is the part that would have had me perk up a little. It's like, oh, wait, oh, there's more to you. Oh, I see what we're doing here.
This definitely got me, like, leaning forward, edge of my seat again, just being like, okay, we're moving somewhere now. We're going. Okay. It's even funnier looking back on the scene in hindsight because of how Kaido is there, and they keep also building up the mystery around his circumstances. That Pizza, who's the one that tried to kill Mamoru with the runaway amusement park ride, like, he initially thought that like he was basically foiled by Kaido, even though he's just standing there glaring and doing nothing.
Yeah.
No, there's actually another reason why the plan failed, and we're going to mention that at the very end of our next and final episode, episode 25, The Voice of Destruction.
Let's go.
In which Mike Sanders apparently has to go back to America, no doubt after finishing his job of espionage without everyone else knowing. But, I mean, he says he'll be back. He even says it all in English, just to be certain. So I believe it.
Yeah, why would he be gone? He has to come back eventually.
Question is, how soon?
Yeah. God.
Yeah, because now we got new Zonder beasts. I say plural because the Machine Kings decide that they're going to take a gamble, even though they are very low on their Zonder metal supplies. They are just going to make 2 beasts right out the gate. One that is running like an ice cream truck, and the other who is like a train station attendant, announcer, whatever it is. And yeah, you get to see more and more of just how their frustrations with their current jobs is what makes them vulnerable to the Zonder scheme. Although, you were right for pointing this out. $6 for fucking ice cream?
Bro, no wonder no one wants your ice cream. Who's gonna fucking pay $6 for ice cream? Come on.
And fucking 97 money, or even 2005 money if we're going by like the near future angle. I mean, like if I'm paying $6 for an ice cream, it's like I'm expecting that to cover most of the way towards a pint.
Yeah, it better be a pint, or it better be like some kind of special flavor, not like vanilla or something.
Like, I know he says that like they're made with very natural ingredients or whatever, but it's also the sort of thing where it's like, obviously he's not making that good of a deal, but also the passerbys are being huge assholes all the same. So it's it makes enough sense why he would be so frustrated with this shit. Remember, treat others with kindness. They might turn into a monster of the week.
And you don't want that to happen. In fact, we get like 2 Monster of the Weeks this time.
At once. And Mike has come back sooner than expected. Literally the same fucking day.
They literally didn't wait an episode or 2. It's just like, nah, he's just back now. It's like, oh, okay, sure.
He comes back conveniently to help save Swan, Mamoru, and like the rest of like his classmates, because I guess they were gonna like needed like a ride to get to somewhere. And Swan has her own party bus. Mm-hmm. That's just her own vehicle.
Yeah, of course.
That's just the car that she drives. Mm-hmm. Sure, we'll go with that.
Sure. Yeah.
And the whole time, because Mike got out of custody of the plane that was transporting him, and 3G needs to apprehend him again. Volfog is there, but this is a good observation on your part. Like, he was so close that he could have got Mike if he really wanted to, but considering what he knows about what Mike and Liger were doing, he is still in that phase of like, I need to sit back and like analyze what is going on to assess their true motivations.
Yeah, my headcanon is that he's just let him go. It's like, he could have caught him. He's fast enough. But, like you said, might as well just wait and watch and just see what they're going to do.
So Swan's bus with, like, the kids and Swan herself are, like, saved. But that's not going to be the end of the troubles for this episode, because with these 2 beasts, they all have something in common, and it is proving to create a new predicament for the 3G robots. Their main attack is through ultrasounds. And they have got the 3G robots all basically trapped in a pincer attack, where like the high vibrations of like these sound waves are causing their internal G liquid to spurt out at high pressure. Remember, if it's not red, then it's acceptable to show it like blood. They even say as much, that it's essentially their lifeblood.
Yeah, they're not.
They are not hiding it.
They're basically bleeding to death, is what they're getting at, yeah.
And even 3G, like, headquarters itself is not safe from this, because they also know where they are, and, like, the both beasts are positioned in just the right angle that they can try and, like, cook their underwater base alive, just because of all, like, the vibration of those water molecules. Mm-hmm. They're still fine, though. The robots, not so much. Even as Volfog and Goldimarg charge forth to, like, try and stop them, but they get caught in the enemy snare. So it's everything about it is getting set up to be, like, clearly we need, like, a new weapon or hero to show up that can actually counteract this particular this dastardly plan. So now it's time for the show to redeem itself in the eyes of my 20-year-old self. Time for Mike Saunders to show his true form. Except not yet.
Not yet.
Damn it, Mike. Oh, but wait, the ultrasound waves head in the direction of Swan and Mamoru and the others as like as they get like knocked off a building. And then, oh wait, never mind. System change, motherfuckers.
Here we go.
Finally, that robot that we saw from the Electric Light Parade. This is Mike Saunders' true form, and it is one of the coolest goddamn robot looks
I love it.
in this entire anime.
He goes from
it's the visor. The visor makes it so well.
He goes from one of the worst designed robots to one of the best in almost an instant. The visor, the guitar, the fucking hoverboard. It's like, yes, it's so good.
And also feels like, based on his origins, appropriately American.
Oh, yeah.
As he basically has like a jukebox compartment in his chest where he pulls out gigantic robot-sized like compact discs, like music CDs, puts them in and starts shouting out stuff as he gets ready to play music. Razzle dazzle double V. You hear an instrumental of the GaoGaiGar theme as it is counteracting the Zonderbeast's ultrasonic waves, and the 3G robots are finally given the opportunity to like get out of that entire snare. At this point, any misgivings I had about Mike's inclusion were completely absolved. This studio knew exactly what they were doing from the beginning. I was a fool to doubt them.
Also, this is such a good way to play the main theme diegetically in the show. Just fucking have someone just rock out to it.
Yeah, because we have an instrumental of the main theme, and then we have an insert theme that is completely unique, and then we go back to the main theme, but this time with lyrics, and it's the second verse, specifically because the second verse has the part where Masaki Endao shouts Goldion Hammer, and it is timed perfectly with Taiga giving the approval to launch the Goldion Hammer.
Oh my god.
Not a single cylinder is going unfired in this climactic fucking battle.
This is what we meant when we said they know how to spice things up, because they're ultimately still using the same animations they use every fight, but this like extra moment gives it so much more like oomph to it. Just makes it feel so much better.
And conveniently, as this is happening, like both of the Zoner Beasts have actually fused together, which means both cores are together, so you don't have to reuse the Goldion Hammer animations twice in a row. You just have to like drive. This time, you only need to drive 2 nails into the center and then use the hooks to grab both cores out at once. Again, all seamlessly integrated into the already existing like key animation.
Yeah.
This anime is fucking genius.
It knows how to use its animations in like smart ways.
Resources are used very well.
It uses them very smartly.
This whole fight, the way it concludes is perfect. Mike is now officially on the team as of today. He's no longer being transferred back to America. Although that's not going to be the end of Dr. Liger's scheming. At least because he gives a mention that, like, he's still in possession of Disc X, which is apparently, like, the ultimate sound weapon that Mike Saunders has access to. I mean, we still haven't even gotten into anything regarding, like, those other robot silhouettes that we saw in episode 23 at the start that looked suspiciously similar to Mike Saunders' like system change mode. Probably because like probably leads it to the fact that him being the 13th means that those were his other 12 brothers. Yeah, you do get to see a lot more of those, like Mike's true potential as you go into the second half. But there is at least one thing that is revealed from that time that I at least want to get this out of the way, because it makes a lot of sense in hindsight when you notice how Mike is able to do his system change, because he was not able to do it willingly on his own at the times that he originally wanted to. But he was somehow able to do it at the end of the past episode, and he did it, in a very dire situation in episode 25. So how did it happen? Well, his system change is otherwise locked out, but can be overridden if Swan White is in danger, because Mike's systems were designed by her brother, Stallion White.
Sure.
That makes sense.
All right. Yeah, show. Also, if you want to know what the Mysterious Disc X is, then if you watch the show, you know. If you haven't watched the show yet, you should watch the show then. to find out yourself.
Yeah, especially after having us talk about this story arc because of just how much it emphasizes what we've talked about with like the studio, like its writers and animators or whatever, just clearly knowing what they are doing and making a kids anime that is not just simply for kids.
Yeah, they like this entire show feels like it was made with people who grew up on the Brave series in mind. Like, they thought that okay, if they've been watching the Brave series since the beginning, they're gonna want more. They're gonna want way more to it. And I think this GaoGaiGar in general, especially this episode, just shows how it has the right amount of sauce to it, where it can appeal to everybody, like no matter how old you are.
Absolutely. It still has so much like appeal and like fondness to people like even this many years out. Obviously, like in Japan, it kind of goes without saying that like the Brave series overall has that effect on people. Like a lot of very strong nostalgia for it overall even today. But even in GaoGaiGar's case, that is still very strong, especially for like hot-blooded super robot fans of a sort. Like this really does make it just one of the all-time greats if you are a fan of that type of show. And even like I think still opens you up to the idea that at the end of the day, that it's like kind of what we always talk about, how much we like sincerity in like these type of media. And like the reason why stuff like a lot of the Brave series is able to endure the way that it has, it is entirely because like so much of like what could be seen as like kids media is not something that has to be looked at in the way that feels like you have to feel like derisive about it if you're an adult. Yeah. Because that's definitely the sort of place I was in when I first watched this, obviously, you know, over a decade ago. And, you know, being like just already like into my 20s and whatnot, that like this was able to, you know, surprise me even when I was seeing all the stuff, especially with the Mike Saunders introduction, where it was like, this feels very like appealing to kids sort of thing, and I'm no longer a kid. I'm at least wanting a bit more meat on like the kind of shows that I like to watch. But kind of warming me back up again, weirdly enough, throughout the years since then, that you can make something that has like this all ages feel to it, and it fucking works.
Yeah, it just works. It just feels. I think that's also like what makes super robot shows so special in the first place, because a lot of them are very simple. They have very simple messages, but they're like, a good super robot show is something that will make you feel good and will entertain you no matter what age you are. And GaoGaiGar is especially one of those.
Absolutely.
And it kind of, in a way, it kind of transports you back to being a kid sometimes. Like, that feeling of watching a show weekly and just looking at the cool robots and all the cool action and all that.
You're able to find enjoyment on the base appeal of it, like the reason you would watch it as a kid, and you're able to still come away with like having something that's a bit more than that by the end of it.
Yeah. Just like watching a show like transform from like, because like we say, GaoGaiGar goes from like kind of a very kids focused show to a very, I don't want to say adult, but it definitely becomes a lot more mature in the second half.
That's a good way to put it.
And then you get the final, and then it just goes off the rails in the best way.
Oh yeah, it does. Oh man, so much good shit just being reminded of from like these 3 episodes, that it's like, it is such a shame I just do not have the time to like sit through all 49 episodes again, because I totally could if I were able to.
That's a big mood.
But it's the biggest fucking mood. I mean, even then, I would still probably use that time to just finish Goldran and Dagwon, because those are still on my bucket list. But then, I think that would be the best thing to reward myself if I ever finally get around to finishing those 2 anime, is to just go back through GaoGaiGar in its entirety and just be like, oh yeah.
Hell yeah.
Oh yeah, it was all worth it for this. Everything building up to this. Like, even though there were originally plans for another TV anime after this with Photogrizer, like, even though that did not happen, I can't feel too bad about it, because it's like GaoGaiGar really does have that feel of like, even though it was not intended, it has like the best feeling of like being a culmination. Yeah. Like, if it had to stop at any point, I'm glad it decided to stop by going out on a huge fucking bang.
It still holds up even after all these years. And I hope we got across how excited we are just talking about this show. I hope our excitement is like you could feel our excitement for this one in particular.
Hope you can feel our excitement as well for like all the episodes up to this point really having to do with like these 4 franchises, because with GaoGaiGar finished, we have now completed phase 2 of our podcast.
Whoa.
Like we have run out of important Mazinger, Gundam, Macross, and Brave series anime to discuss and recommend with you all. Now the rest of this podcast is going to get into some wild fucking directions because you're about to see over the coming weeks as we get closer to the finish line that the landscape of the mecha genre is able to have so many wild ideas and like points of inspiration and influence that go beyond what Mazinger did or what Gundam did, Macross and the Brave series both, like all this stuff. But in order to prepare for that, probably the only time we're going to do this for the listeners is that we are not going to have the episode after this be ready the exact following week that you hear this.
Yeah.
We're going to be giving you an extra week's break of time. Yeah. Which also correlates with us as we get ready to get our plans put together as far as like what our next topics are going to be going in. Yes, 2 addendums in 1 episode, but this second is extra important. By the time you're listening to this episode, it will be the end of June, and as of this time, Neff is currently on vacation and I'm using my extra free time on other projects as we wait to reconvene and record more episodes. Because of this amount of time, we're pushing back when the next episode will air, which will now be on the 30th of July. This is just so the 2 of us aren't dangerously close to having no backlog of episodes to keep the schedule consistent. Still, use that time to watch the anime we recommend. And now back to the show. But rest assured, the mission statement of the podcast remains the same. These are all going to be things that we highly recommend, and at least this time, since we do not have the benefit of like major long-running franchises in the case of most of them that they are built on, you're going to have like some very big surprises as far as what we decide to talk about.
Oh yeah, there's
you might be blown away when you hear us talk about some and be like, I never heard of that, or wait, that's good.
Oh yeah, there's I'm not going to spoil it. There's going to be a show or 2 that might raise some eyebrows when we talk about it, but there's everything we talk about is going to be genuinely recommended by us, is how I'll put it. Even if it looks like trash.
Well, one person's trash is another treasure, or however the saying goes. You know how it is. So it was always a fun time. Thanks for being on, Neff. Thanks especially just for how we've been able to keep doing this. This podcast, make it up to this milestone.
Yeah.
But like now the biggest challenge is ahead of us, really.
Oh boy, it is. This is where the real podcast starts, I guess.
So in the meantime, watch some robot anime. Enrich your lives. Do it. Do it for us.
Do it. Get some courage in your life. You'll thank us.
Absolutely. We'll see you for our next episode. This one we're actually keeping it a surprise until then.
Yes.
So take care, everyone.
Bye, everyone.